just get started just because we have 90 minutes and we want to make great use of all 90 of them. So I'm going to actually share my screen and, the host has disabled screen sharing. Okay, Sean, if you can hear me, is it possible to enable me to share my screen? Wait a second, I may have been able to do it myself. Okay, there was a function there to allow panelists to do so, so I did. All right. Okay. Everybody can see my screen? Good. Okay, great. All right, so, first I just want to, before we get started, talk a little bit about what we're going to do, what the guidelines will be, or just kind of the format, how we're going to run it, just to make sure that we do this as efficiently as possible. And yeah, I also just want to introduce ourselves. I know for a lot of people, this may be the first board-related event that you've been to. So my name is Brendan Carty. I am a member of the Board of Education. I am joined by my fellow board members, Margaret Quinn and Nina Ross, who are also on the communication committee with me. And this event is a outreach forum that's run through the communication committee. So Margaret and Nina were instrumental in putting this together, along with Terry, our superintendent, Terry Dade. He helped not only get the technical stuff going, which hopefully Terry goes off without a hitch, but also in planning the content as well. And we also have our esteemed board colleague Larry Berger on as well. Larry, I don't want to date Larry. All I'm going to say is Larry knows a lot from a long time of doing this, so it's great to have Larry's collective wisdom here. So, and also, obviously, we have all of the attendees, which seeing the number rising is great to see. I want to thank everybody for being here. Also, thank everybody who passed a question along. We got over 100 questions in the last week, and which is probably more than I thought we'd get, but surprised definitely in a good way. As your questions were coming in, I couldn't help but nod along with you, because you're expressing your concerns as parents, and I'm a parent myself. I think that's certainly my primary motivation for being on the board. And in fact, everyone who is on our board is either the parent or grandparent of a current student or the parent of a past student. And the same goes for our central admin team. I know Terry and Megan currently have children in the school district as well. So I know reading your questions, there's a lot of passion around these issues. And I just want you to know that this is just as important to us as it is to you, because this is our kids involved as well. Obviously, there's a lot of different opinions as to the best ways to do things. And that's why we have an event like this, so that we can hear everybody's concerns. We can take in your insights, answer your questions whenever we can, because a school district represents its community, and it should answer the needs of the community. And an event like this allows us to figure out what those needs are. So just want to go into just a quick review of kind of what we're going to do here. The high level goal of this forum: we want to have an open, honest dialogue between the community, board, and school district about the challenges facing our schools during what has obviously been a very difficult year. At the end of tonight, I think this is just a key managing expectations point. We don't expect to solve every problem. We're not, first of all, this isn't an official board meeting. This is an outreach event. The goal is to hear as many voices as possible while providing the best answers we can. So I'm sure there will be questions that are not 100% answered to everyone's satisfaction, and I totally understand that. But this is kind of an intake event for us. We want to hear your concerns, want to answer questions, obviously, when necessary or when possible. But anything that once we have all that insight, then over the following days and weeks, that's when we can really absorb it and turn it into action where possible. Now, what will be discussed, like I said, we received over 100 questions from over 50 respondents. They covered a full range of topics, going full remote, going in person, safety protocols, et cetera. We obviously don't have time to do 100 questions, but as is often the case with these kinds of things, you get 100 questions, but many times, many of them are, mirror images of another question. So we've actually condensed the 100 questions down into 22 archetype questions, let's call them, that cover, the full range of topics. But, so 5 people asked basically the same question. We're considering that one question and then giving credit to the 5 that asked it, but then, answering it as one. Now, question about the format. So this is how we're going to do it. When somebody asks or when we go through the list of questions, we will read the person or persons in this case, because like I said, it's going to be number of people per question. And then we're going to ask them to raise their hand, at which point, if they want to be invited in for a follow-up, they can raise their hand. If you ask the question and your question is read and you are fine with not being invited in, you just want to hear the answer and move on, that is completely fine. We're just trying to give you the opportunity to join. So once you read your name, if you want to join, raise your hand. You'll be invited into this little group here. We'll read the question, we'll offer a response, and then we ask, we'll have about a minute for a quick follow-up from those who submitted a question. Now, I see people raising hands right now. This goes to a point right here. You can also use the chat window to ask follow-ups while we respond. So if you have a quick question about the format, it may be easiest to just type your question in the chat window, and we can respond that way. And we haven't actually talked about who's going to monitor the chat window on our side. I don't know, Margaret, I'm looking at you for some reason as maybe the chat window extraordinaire. If you can just keep an eye on that kind of stuff as it comes in.
Yes.
And do we have
Sure
any
thing.
questions that are coming in about format, that stuff that we should answer now?
I actually don't see any questions at all. I saw just
Okay.
Trisha's earlier. So I don't see any questions, but I'll let you know as
so
soon as I
anybody
hear.
that is, perhaps you were raising your hand because you had a question about the format, feel free to just type out a quick question and then we can respond. So, but like I said, we have 22 questions for 90 minutes, which is now, about 84 minutes. So that leaves us about 4 minutes per question total. So, again, going back to the goal of the forum, we don't expect to solve every problem. We want to hear as many voices as possible while providing the best answers we can. That kind of ties into the format questions here. I know that there's probably some questions that we can spend 90 minutes on, but we want to be able to move through and hear as many voices as we can. So, if you have a follow-up, we would just ask, let's all try to be as succinct as possible, just with respect to those who have asked other questions that we haven't yet gotten to. Okay. So, Margaret, and Teresa Budik has just joined, our fellow board member. Teresa, good to have you.
Thank you.
So, Margaret, before we go right into the questions, anything to be aware of on chat? No? Okay.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to take myself off the share here just so we can start going through the questions.
Actually, I want to make sure I'm seeing, can somebody who's in the audience just send a chat to everybody, please? Just to make sure that I don't miss anything. So when you click on it, you click on panelists or panelists and attendees.
Oh, I'm seeing the chat.
Okay, I'm getting a bunch now. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I see him, and hello to you back.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's go into the first group. So again, this we're probably all going to get familiar with the format together. But again, I'm going to call out your name. If you would like to be involved in the panel while we answer the question, raise your hand. If you do not, totally fine. We will still read and answer your question. So we will start with, we're doing the first questions are related to COVID medical issues. So the first question was asked both by Lisa Marassi and Ann Dignan. So Lisa and Ann, if you would like to be in, just raise your hand. In the meantime, I'll read the question. We can start answering, and then Lisa and Ann, if you want to join, you can. So together they asked, I would like to know, is the virus being transferred from person to person in the school, or is it just somebody getting it at home or elsewhere? What's the percentage of positives for kids who are in quarantine as a result of a proximate or direct exposure? And if it is a low percentage, maybe the district needs to start talking with the Orange County Department of Health and or Albany. If masks work, why do we need to quarantine? So I can offer a start on that answer before I kick it off to Terry. But what this question is getting at the larger question of community spread. You know, like, is it when if a child comes into school and is positive, are they passing it along to the children who perhaps sit next to them in class? And we would be able to tell this because a week after that child tested positive, you would start seeing positive tests crop up in their immediate cohort. And we have not seen that, certainly not at a large scale. So, which is a great encouraging sign for our masks and just our protocols in general. Now, Terry, I don't know if that's never happened. I know it hasn't certainly been a trend, but perhaps you can add a little bit more detail to that.
Yeah, Mr. Carty's spot on. We've had one instance where we tried to do some more digging because we suspected that there was spread from staff member to staff member at one of our buildings. Clearly, they were in the same location, and numerous came down with COVID. That is the only instance that we are aware of in our school community. So clearly, it's coming from outside in. We went so far as to ask the Department of Health to provide us with any evidence that out of all of the kids that we've quarantined and all the staff that we've quarantined, are we seeing positive COVID results as a result of that precautionary quarantine? And we just haven't been able to see that evidence. So we do believe masking is working and social distancing in our protocols. We just have not seen that evidence thus far.
Got it. And we just got a follow-up question. What about new strains being more contagious? I mean, I don't know, Tara, if you have anything, from a medical standpoint, I think there's so much that's unknown about just how much, that will affect community spread within the school. But, certainly that's why we stay in touch with both the New York State Department of Health and Orange County Department of Health. They're the ones that are monitoring that most closely and are giving, would update their guidance based on that. I mean, no school district has the advanced medical tracking capability on its own to do that kind of work. So we rely on the various health outlets to provide us that guidance, which, they are on a regular basis. Okay. I guess there was no,
Anne raised
Okay.
her hand. This was my question. So if that is the case, has the district tried to communicate with the state or DOH to change the quarantining?
Yeah, we actually have, that's a question that we have about CDC quarantine guidelines and everything. I mean, to be honest, my personal take on it is that there's two ways that you can interpret these results. Number one, that the quarantining or that the health protocols are working. And, the quarantining, I know that there has been, we're going to get to a debate on that in a few minutes with the difference between updated CDC guidelines and whatnot. But, we can certainly communicate that, but it's hard to have that. They're seeing the same data that we are. So it's not as if we can bring a new argument to the table that they haven't seen. But Terry, I'll allow you to expand on that.
Yeah, and this is Ms. Digman's asking a great question. And one of I think a group of parents asked the same piece with regards to quarantining. We have there's numerous superintendents in Orange County who have expressed extremely vocally that there's close contact quarantining, which is within 6 feet for 10 minutes or more with the positive individual. if we quarantine students and staff based on close contact, the numbers of quarantined students and staff in Cornwall would be maybe 25% of what we do now. Precautionary quarantine is where Orange County Department of Health is mandating that we quarantine our students and staff. So precautionary is if a positive case is in a classroom, our students are getting hit hard with in our large cafeterias. Even if a student is in the back corner, the whole cafeteria is quarantined. So I've argued extensively that we have cameras, we investigate, we interview, that we should be able to have that conversation with the Department of Health about who was within close proximity with all of our additional protocols. So yes, we've raised it. I would encourage parents to raise that as well, because not everyone in the state is going by the precautionary quarantine measures that Orange County is.
Very good. Okay, so Margaret, do you want to lead into
Uh,
the?
There's one
Oh.
more follow-up question. Can students eat in their classroom to avoid the larger quarantine?
So at the high school and middle school, it's just impossible. There's no way to still run classes and have them meet in their classrooms. Even at CES, we tried to figure out how to make it work in classrooms and versus the cafeteria, but with the lunch schedule and the sheer volume of students, it's just a no-go. COH and Willow Avenue are eating in their classrooms, which is helping drop some of the numbers that would be impacted with quarantine. So yeah, Jennifer, we've looked at that extensively, but with sheer numbers at the high school, middle school, and CES, we just weren't able to make it work.
All right. We do have other questions that are coming up on quarantine. I'm wondering if we should just take that question now since we're kind of talking about it.
Well, yeah, the one follow-up is, so who do we speak to so we can switch to the other way of quarantining? And I've also heard that the Orange County Department of Health is including the lunchroom students to quarantine, that other regions in New York State do not follow that guideline. So as far as the parents, who could the parents speak to so we could switch to the other way of quarantine? Is there somebody specific at the Department of Health or state government that they can address their concerns to, so we can get plenty of people going and sending communications there so our voices can be heard?
Absolutely. It's Dr. Zucker at the state level, who we've emailed, and Dr. Gelman at the Orange County Department of Health. For this in particular protocol, the most effective would be Dr. Gelman. This is not a state Department of Health protocol. It is an Orange County Department of Health protocol. So that's who we work with on the contact tracing. We send them the list of everyone who was in those large spaces and the like. And then unfortunately, due to their precautionary quarantine guidelines, that's who ends up being put out of school.
Okay.
While we're at it, because we have another question that's on CDC quarantine guidelines. So there's, I'm feeling maybe we should just read that one and then go through. And I know that there's going to be some people that are asking questions through chat. We do have a whole list of questions that were sent in beforehand, so I do want to respect the people that did that. So
And we can
if we
always
do have
save
to-
these and include
Exactly.
them in the ultimate responses.
right
when we're
for
gonna
anything
post
we
on
don't
the
get to
website.
tonight. Exactly. We're gonna cycle back. So if we don't get to your question, we'll save the chat and respond later. So since we're on the topic, and I know Margaret, Nina, I'm going out of order here. Number 4 was my question, so I'll get 2 in a row, and then you can take them over. So this one was from a kind of an amalgamation from Adam Sawyer, Kathleen Murphy, Christine Valdueza, and Dr. Paul Maxwell. And by the way, if I mispronounce anybody's name, I am very sorry in advance. So this one says several parents have raised concerns that the quarantine protocols in our district are more strict than those recommended by the CDC. One parent points out that CDC guidelines maintain that an individual should only be quarantined when exposed to a COVID positive individual when they've been closer than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes without a mask. If CDC guidelines were followed, only a few students and teachers would be required to quarantine every time there's a COVID positive case, not every single student and teacher in every classroom and lunchroom, as is currently being done. This simple change of adhering to CDC guidelines would enable all schools to conduct continuous and uninterrupted in-person classes with minimal risk. Terry, I know that that's kind of addressing the same topics that you were just discussing. Is there anything that you want to add to that, and just in that context?
Just to reiterate, there's two types of quarantine protocols being followed across the state. The CDC recommendation of close contacts, which are 6 feet to the positive case for anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. By district and region, it might change, 10 minutes in one, 15 in another. Versus what we have in Orange County is the proximate. You notice in my letters, I always say direct or proximate. Direct is CDC, proximate is Orange County. So that's a precautionary quarantine. That's where the whole bus gets quarantined, even if the student's in the back of the bus and my stepdaughter sitting in the front seat. The cafeteria, that corner versus the other half of the room, that's a precautionary quarantine, and that's Orange County Department of Health. So again, that's Dr. Gelman at the Orange County Department of Health. Dr. Jackie Lawler has also been really helpful in answering questions from parents and us superintendents.
And I would just add to that, you really can just pick up the phone and call the Department of Health in Orange County. I've done it myself, and you don't. It's not customer service at Verizon. Like you get somebody on the phone in 3 rings. So if you have a question, I would implore you to do that. Okay, I guess we can move on now. Margaret, if you wanted to go to question, what was it, to 2 there?
Safety remote, that one?
No, well, we do have still a couple questions on the just on the COVID
Okay.
medical. Yeah, the students visibly
Okay.
ill.
So if students in the building are visibly ill, for example, with a runny nose and coughing, is there a policy in place that they are automatically sent home? Also, what about students being in school while awaiting results for their COVID-19 tests? Is there accountability for students who attend in-person school while knowing that they are waiting for their test results? And that came from Ms. Pagano and Ms. Versace.
Want to break this apart into a few things. If they're visibly ill, that's one thing. If they look ill, they're acting lethargic, in addition to a runny nose and coughing, then yes, they're sent by our teaching staff or our staff members in general to our nurses, who are phenomenal. They do a great job of checking out the student, calling the parent, and getting them home. I want to be careful here that every runny nose in the district is not being sent home. It's 20 degrees out right now. So a lot of us have runny noses. So we have to be careful about a line that we might draw. It's really the ill part. So our teachers and our staff are doing a fantastic job of getting the students to the nurse. I have a running log of who's being seen, who's being sent home, and the like. With regards to the accountability piece for awaiting COVID results, that's something that we could get better at. That is a question on our screener. It's something I've lobbied our community to do, help us out a little bit more on completing that screener at home before sending a child to school. One of the questions on the screener before you hit no and getting the green light to come in is, are you awaiting the results of a COVID test? If you're awaiting the results, they should stay home. That's adults, that's kids, that's anyone in New York. Stay home if you're awaiting the results of a COVID test. Accountability is a conversation. We're not going to punish kids for what could be a mistake, an oversight, or the like. So we do have conversations, and we try to keep our kids and our staff as safe as possible.
Okay, so do you want to, Ms. Pagano,
Yes, hi, yes, thank you.
Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead? with your
Yes, I'll quickly address that. So my concern, of course, being a teacher and a parent of a 5th and 9th grader, very concerned about this because I've been living it, since September, of course. And my concern is I've had a daughter who has been quarantined multiple times from the high school, 3 times, actually. She's actually in one right now. Which, of course, as a parent, we understand that the district has to take precautions. But my concern is if that student who she was exposed to went to school that day awaiting tests, and 2 days later they get the result, I get a call from your district Friday afternoon. My concern is that that student was there and awaiting test results, and the parents should, of course, be notified that that is not the protocol for SNAP. I'm concerned that if we keep up this format and keep allowing students in while they wait their test for whatever reason, if they're going on vacation or whatever they're going to do, we're going to find that we're going to have a lot of these continual quarantines. And that's kind of what I want to avoid, and just kind of, lessen these incidents over and over again, which of course cause turmoil, as we all know. And getting a doctor's note is a whole nother situation.
We couldn't agree more. One of our nightmare scenarios is anyone coming into our building while they're awaiting a COVID test result and then they pop positive. That is something that we want or look for. We're trying to keep up the education of our community to make sure they do just that. So you're spot on. We don't want that to ever happen, but we also have to continue to educate our community.
And are students still allowed to come into the school if their parents aren't filling out the SNAP form? That's one of my concerns as well. And as you know, one of those questions, of course, is, are you waiting for a test result for COVID? So I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, we can't deny education, so we do allow them in, but we take their temperature and then they come in. So it hasn't been very often that that's occurred, so we're hopeful that we'll continue to educate. Everyone should understand that if you're awaiting a COVID test result, you shouldn't be leaving your house, period. Not just school, that's at businesses, stores, and to keep New York safe.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Pagano. Okay, I'm gonna remove you if I kick you out accidentally from the entire call. That was not on purpose. You're kind of our guinea pig here. Okay. Okay. All right. Worked on our end. I don't know where she went, on her end, but okay. All right. So Nina, I guess we can move on to question 3 there.
There were a couple of chats that came through.
Okay.
The one says, I've been getting emails every other day about staff or student being positive. How can we protect our families, especially if you're the breadwinner of the family that has to stay home without pay from work due to these positive cases? Was the one. So what can be done, I guess? What can families do to protect themselves? And then there's one, I've been told that my son will be refused remote learning because he's home and not attending school due to the COVID and concerns of other parents as well. How can this be addressed? And lastly, if an individual has had COVID in the last 3 months, does that individual need to quarantine in Cornwall schools? According to the CDC guidelines, they do not need to quarantine. I don't know if the rules are different for education, but those were the 3 that came in.
So we're doing as much as we can to keep our kids in school and safe. The quarantine protocols are Orange County's protocols, so we have to follow them. We're getting further guidance with regards to the 90 days. I just had a meeting with Dr. Gelman on Sunday, and she's looking into that matter. So something would come out to all school districts and all healthcare providers with an update on that 90-day protocol about if you've had COVID in the past 90 days, then you shouldn't have to quarantine, but that's a CDC protocol.
Okay, very good. All right, Nina, I think we're we're ready for yours.
So the question is from Melissa Colson. So Melissa, if you want to raise your hand and come into the panel. So when reviewing other Orange County School District reopening plan websites, I noticed many or most do not refer to OCDOH as a governing body to make school decisions. Why did CCSD decide that OCDOH was holding them back over guidance from New York State? OCDOH requires doctor's notes from every student that the school quarantines if the student returns before 3 weeks. CCSD is not following this OCDOH guideline. OCDOH recommended a 2-week holiday pause after Thanksgiving and Christmas, which CCSD did not follow. Who decides which policies will be followed?
So there's recommendations and there's mandates. If there is a mandate that this district is not following, please let me know. Email me, email the board. Any mandate we are following. That's masking, social distancing, and the like. So those are mandates by New York State and OCDOH. An example of an OCDOH specific mandate was masks in all of our buildings, which we came out even before they did that mandate and said that we were going to do that here in Cornwall. The doctor's notes, they're required for everyone returning from quarantine, period. So the only time that was not an expectation was if we had a pause and it was 3 weeks in duration, then they did not need to have a doctor's note, but that was right from Orange County Department of Health. The pause was a recommendation. I asked Dr. Gelman that specifically. I said, is this an executive order from the health commissioner that we must pause for 2 weeks or pause all the way from Thanksgiving to Martin Luther King Jr. holiday? And she did not. In fact, she sent out 2 letters recommending what districts do. So we aren't picking and choosing which mandates to follow. We are picking and choosing which recommendations to follow. If we were to try to follow every recommendation, we would not be able to operate as a district. So that's where we stand on those policies.
I know Melissa is on as a panelist. So Melissa, certainly if you want to, you're on mute now, but if you want to ask a follow-up question.
No, I think I have a bunch more questions in there, Brendan.
No, I had to categorize them in
I
different.
know, that's okay.
Yeah, so they will appear as we go down the list. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. And Melissa, I'm gonna have to send you. I feel like it's like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory when he sends him down. I mean, not that I'm deriving any pleasure out of it, but okay, I'm gonna have to. Sorry, I'm gonna have to remove you. Okay, Melissa, I'm sure you'll be back shortly.
So while you're doing that, there were 2 items in the chat. One was my son had COVID in the beginning of January. The Orange County Department of Health told me on the phone that he did not have to quarantine for 90 days. So I don't know how that works with the whole process. And then my son has been absent 35 days since the beginning of the school year to now. I have been told that he is at risk in regards to his education because of this. How can this be addressed? This is due to the accountability set by the school district in marking a student absent, etc. And then the last one, when 13 school districts in Orange County stay closed until after Martin Luther King and our high school and middle school both had quarantine in the following week, did we make a mistake going back quickly?
So for individual student concerns, I want to make sure that we're following up with specific teachers, buildings. So I don't want to dive into specific student concerns. For the high school and the middle school, we did not see an increase in positive cases among staff or students after any of our pauses. So we've had to go remote when it wasn't directly following Thanksgiving or winter break. So we don't believe we made a mistake. We believe we were able to get more instruction in. The close, as you all know, at the high school level, unfortunately could happen any week. So the middle school has been through certain pauses of certain grade levels as well throughout the year.
Okay, there was one more in the chat, but
Yeah.
my high school son was told by a teacher that they will be live streaming on off days like other districts. Are we planning this?
So that's actually another question in another
Down the line, so we'll get-
section. So, and I will, I mean, as much as we want this to be as collaborative as possible, but I'm just keeping an eye on our pace here.
Yeah.
And we may have to limit the chat questions because again, we just want to give respect to those that email their questions beforehand. But that question in particular is actually addressed further down the line. Okay, I think we can move on to our next section, which is the safety and remote. So there was I'm actually going to read a bunch of statements that were from parents, and then there's a question at the end of it. So Leslie Sepulveda writes, I would like remote. I just would like remote learning. I feel it's much safer with all the classes showing up. All the cases showing up, safety first. Beth Abarca writes that my son is in 12th grade. Now that there are new strains of the virus as well as an uptick in cases, I strongly support 100% remote until May. All other options are too risky. Elizabeth Elistalo writes, my children's teachers have been phenomenal throughout this situation. My confidence does not extend to the governing powers of the district who continue to handle the pandemic with an almost flippant disregard for health and safety. Education is important, but not at the expense of lives. And Camilla Addison writes, it is very upsetting that every week we get a note of COVID exposure to our children and they bring home potential risks to the family. The CDC has predicted that by March, there will be great deaths from the variant strains. For anyone whose statement I just read, if you would like to be part of the follow-up for the next question, I would encourage you to raise your hand. We'll welcome you in. But the question at the end of this, this is from kind of a combined question from Brenda Osborne and Karen and Kevin Rothman. This school year has been so chaotic between periods of quarantine on and off, again, due to COVID exposures. Is there any consideration being given to allowing students and families to opt in to a fully remote model? That way, at least the kids would have a consistent schedule. So anybody whose name was mentioned, again, who wants to raise your hand and come on, we'll let you in. But Terry, I'll pass that question on to you.
So this and the next question are kind of asking two very different, the full remote option versus have our kids in 5 days a week option. So right now we are investigating, how do we allow for streaming 5 days a week. We're having those conversations at the high school and middle school levels. So that when you're in person, you're in person. When you're remote, you're actually streaming into our classrooms. That's what the vast majority of districts across the state are doing for remote instruction. One of the considerations that we have to take into account is that our hybrid model consists of, on remote days, recorded lessons. The difficulty with full remote versus full in person is that with the hybrid model, the way it stands, we can't do both at the same time. You can't have teachers posting recorded lessons on remote days, and then what would other students be responsible for? All that said, the guidelines are changing every day. My strong feeling is that we're having questions and next steps on sports coming back online fully. So we should be having the same conversations around moving in-person instruction forward in the state of New York. So we are considering different options. Right now, the next step could be streaming students from outside in on their remote days into the classroom 5 days a week. Again, these are just conversations that we're having with all of our staff at this time to look at barriers, challenges, and the like, but that's the next step. If that goes well, then we can talk more about a full opt-out possibility, but we're nowhere near there right now. Next step at the high school and middle school level is really looking at 5 days a week, synchronous instruction. And right now we're in the discussion phase.
Great. I know I let two of the questioners in. I don't know if you wanted to ask any follow-ups, but now would be your opportunity. I saw some questions coming in about, why the recorded lessons. And just know, there was a whole series of questions. I called them the Monday questions. What are we doing with Mondays? How can we do better with Mondays? So we'll be getting to that topic in a little bit. Okay. So let's move to, Margaret, if you wanted to, where are we on question? This is our
5 day
And the 5-day in person.
Yeah, we're up to a 5-day in person. Yeah, if you want to just read the statement first and then I guess go to that next one.
Okay, so Natalie Pollack, her statement was, I don't have any particular question to ask at the forum. I would just like to go on record to say I would love to see the kids going back full-time in the near future. And the question, shush, and the question that's part of that, I'm sorry, that was my cat chiming in. Anne Marie Hogan, Melissa Colsant, the Clearwater family, Jen Grammersdorf, Tracy Laffin, Elaine Lynch, Christine Laporta, and Julie Cervoni. The question is, are there options for bringing students back 5 days in person? 3 options. 1, send out a questionnaire and give parents the option to stay home without a medical reason, therefore freeing up space for the kids who want to be full-time. Second option, move to a 5-day-a-week half-day schedule with cohort A in the mornings and cohort B in the afternoons. Third option, use whatever extra space you have, gyms, libraries, cafeterias, computer labs, art rooms, auditoriums, etc., to at least to get the younger grades back. That was a loaded one. So this is the 5-day in person.
So a few pieces here. We sent out a questionnaire at the beginning of the year just to kind of get a sense of how many parents wanted full in-person versus full remote. And when we crunched those numbers, I articulated to the community that it just wasn't going to work with regards to staffing and the like. I do have to say one of the key pieces that we've seen from other districts is having students on screen and in person at the high school level is not easy. And having that with a group of kindergartners is astronomically more difficult. So when we talk about this being an option K-12, there's a lot of things we have to consider and weigh with regards to what our teaching staff who are already working their behinds off to pull off our hybrid model, what they would have to manage to make this happen. So that's the conversations, the extensive conversations that we're having at the middle and high school level to say, what do you need? What are some barriers? What are some challenges? We haven't even begun those conversations at the elementary level because I'm an elementary teacher, principal, the like. I know what that could look like. With regards to space, most districts, I would have to say, the vast majority who have been able to bring in younger students 5 days a week in person had an extra building to open. So I know of 2 neighboring districts that brought another building online and put elementary school students into those buildings, thus allowing them to maintain the mandate of 6-foot social distancing. That's 6-foot social distancing of desks, space, and the like. We did look at gyms, libraries, cafeterias. All of those spaces are being utilized in our hybrid model in very creative ways, but we just can't fill those spaces with classrooms of kids and maintain semblance of order, nor the spacing that would be required.
And Terry, part of that question, which was going to 5 days, half days. So a cohort A in the morning, cohort B in the afternoon.
So this is going to be a shocker for everyone listening. Some people wouldn't be fans of that. So it's something that we considered. It's things that we kind of investigated. That's probably if you look at all the models across the state, it's probably the one least chosen amongst parents and teachers and the like. It's pretty tough to get that to happen. I understand the intent, getting them in 5 days a week is better than just every other day and the like. Absolutely get that. But management of buses, transportation, pickup, drop off, just in a normal day, maintaining protocols, it has been tough. Imagine doubling that with a midday switch and the like, and to sanitize and get our spaces ready was just too much of a lift for us.
And there was one follow-up on the chat. Why can't you designate one teacher per grade to just remote?
Yeah, we looked at that. I'll try to get out when Mr. Cardy sends out a follow-up. One of my letters said just the staffing that it would take to pull this off. And we were in excess of 30 staff members for per grade. It sounds like it's not that much, but when you think of a high school, you can't go per grade. You have to go per subject, per grade, per level. So once you start thinking through all of those scenarios, the number of staff that we would need to assign them per grade and content, we would just not be able to function as a district budgetarily to make that happen. We did consider it, but it just, we wouldn't be able to pull it off with our budget.
There was
Okay.
one other
Yeah.
note that came through, and it was perhaps another survey would help gauge family needs now that we're halfway through.
Yeah,
So-
and I like that suggestion. Maybe another survey out just to see kind of where we stand now and send it out to the community just to see, and then look at some possibilities. I agree with that.
And
Okay.
during the discussion, Ms. Grammersdorf was promoted to a panelist. I don't know if you wanted to ask a follow-up question. If not, we can move on.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay,
Perfect.
you can hear me? If, I just have a question. If you provided a more robust 100% remote option for families, and made it easier for families to choose that, especially like at the elementary level, would that leave fewer students choosing in-person instruction? Therefore, having fewer students in the classroom at a time, opening it up to more 5 day a week instruction.
Yes, that could be a possibility. I just have to engage our teachers and other staff of what that actually looks like in a classroom to have, let's say, 12 kindergartners in a Google Meet and then 8 in the classroom, and being able to manage both. So yeah, it could actually decrease the numbers of in-person, but we still have the concern of how do you teach both on screen and in person, particularly at the younger ages. But it's definitely something, like I said, we started the conversation at the middle and high school. Elementary would be next, just to start those conversations with teachers to see if that would be a possibility.
Okay, well, I'm also, if I can just say one more thing, I'm also just maybe, I was thinking more of having a designated teacher to teach those remote kids and not, Zoom, Skyping in or whatever, Google meeting into the classroom.
Yeah, that would be our preference. We just can't afford it. We
It's a
just
lot,
can't
yeah.
hire
Okay.
all the extra staff that would be necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one follow-up, just Melissa Colson on chats says Willow Avenue has a lot of extra space. Can we put all K kindergarten in Willow and then adjust where we have the elementary kids 1 through 4? So I guess kind of, treating the 3 elementary schools as sort of a collective space.
I just, I don't want to speak for all of Willow. They are asking me for more space. They do not have extra space over there. we've tried the different scenarios, but we just don't see just opening our buildings under our current plan of cohort 1 versus cohort 2. We were down to numbers of, there were some families who were like, we're 2 over. We have to move them to cohort 2. We just don't have the space needed for the social distancing, all the desk spacing that's needed at any of our buildings.
There was one other question that came in. Are there any options for summer learning that the district can explore for all students?
Yeah, we're already exploring that. It's just a budget piece and what that could look like, but we're definitely thinking through what some summer options could be.
Okay, I know we have a bunch coming in. Just know that if your chat question isn't answered, I'm taking them all and putting them on a side doc. So we're going to have all that stuff for after the meeting as well. Okay, so I think we can move to the next question, which
That's Nina.
is
Okay.
Nina. Okay.
So this question came from Melissa Colson and Erin McKenna. Is there anything we can do as parents to get our kids back in school, at least the ones that want to go 100% of the time? Could we protest one day in Albany, protest outside the school with media coverage so Albany can hear us, write letters to the OC health department with letters to our pediatrician? The squeaky wheel gets the oil, no? Why can they, what can they do? Take our funding away? I would gladly like to hear these suggestions sent out to the parents. Parents are writing letters and petitions to increase in-person learning. What is the superintendent, CCSD, doing to help us gain support and voices heard to the appropriate person? What actions are the superintendent and the CCSD taking to ensure that FTIP can resume as quickly and safely as possible? Will the superintendent or CCSD support our petition efforts and direct it towards these persons that can implement changes to form a unified front?
So again, this is not a superintendent or a board decision for in-person instruction. This board and the superintendent were the first ones out of the gate, opening our buildings for in-person instruction as soon as possible in September. So we've stated where kind of we stand on the importance of in-person instruction. That said, we are not permitted to just ignore existing guidelines that have been established by New York State Department of Health, which is the mandate for social distancing. So what I would encourage is athletics were very successful organizing. I am on record saying if we can go full green for all high-risk sports, then we should have the same type of energy at the state level, at the local level, and with all of our teaching staff, our administrators, parents, and community to say, if we can figure out guidelines that would allow all high-risk sports to go, surely we can figure out how to bring our students back safely for in-person instruction. I'm appalled that the governor can make an announcement on a Friday, and by the next Friday, 1 week's time, we overturn the entire state of New York to figure out guidelines to allow sports to occur. I am a 4-sport varsity athlete. I played sports from 6 years old on, but I've also said with this board in full support that whatever we do for athletics, we're going to do for the arts, and we're going to do for academics. So I think that we need to figure out how to smartly and strategically contact those in power. That would be Dr. Zucker at the New York State Department of Health. I don't think that this is a Dr. Gelman decision. She has to follow what the state is saying for in-person instruction. So whatever you can do to contact those that need to be hear the message at the Department of Health for New York State and the governor's office himself would be my recommendation.
Okay. And one follow-up, Lisa Morassi on the chat was saying that, so Sorry, just lost it for a second. Recently, the CDC has said it's okay for kids to be back in school. Why can't Orange County Department of Health make new guidelines for in-school instruction? I could take a stab at that, Terry, just quickly, because that's something that I've heard myself and kind of looked into it. So when the CDC, that was a big announcement that was, I believe, last week. You know, the headline was CDC allows in-person instruction, but the guidance was still essentially the same as it's always been, which was still with 6 feet and masks. So, you know, it's a great headline. You know, I think it was misleading though. It made it seem as though it's allowing full person, regular, full class, 5 day a week. And that's not really what the guidance was. It actually, the details hadn't actually changed from anything that they've been saying all year. But Terry, I don't know if you had a different take on that.
Spot on. And again, this in particular piece, in-person instruction, is not Dr. Gelman. This is New York State Department of Health would have to come out with something to say full mask and social distancing where possible, and the like. And it would be based on the data that we're seeing. Districts across the state are testing kids and staff in their school buildings, and we're just not seeing the positivity rate of the broader community. So again, that would be a New York State Department of Health, just like the governor did on Friday, to say, yep, at the local level, you can figure out how to make high-risk sports work. He could say the same thing for in-person instruction.
Okay.
One quick message on the chat. Would students still have time? I'm sorry, would students still have to adhere to social distance guidelines if the majority of CCSD staff were vaccinated? What percentage of staff would have to be vaccinated? And are we considering this as a way to open full time?
So just staff getting vaccinated is not going to solve our issues in any school district. You still have thousands of kids who we have to worry about, making sure we keep them safe as well. So getting all of our staff vaccinated is a huge step. They've been frontline workers. They're essential workers. I don't care what anyone says. Our staff have taken on the burden of providing high quality education and done it like champions. That said, we haven't even seen a test trial for kids yet for the vaccine. So our hope is that something gets rolled out so that we can start thinking through full vaccination of students as well.
Okay.
There were a couple more, but I think they can go into the responses.
Yeah. I'm putting them over into the other group. Well, the next question is actually kind of answered already. Terry just touched on the extracurriculars. I'll read the question and the names. It's from Christine Diaz, Blaze Gomez, and Victoria Halfpenny about extracurriculars, in particular non-sports. All I've seen in the media is talk about resuming sports, which I think is important. I want to ask the Board of Ed to ensure that they aren't having a siloed discussion about student activities. While considering the options of resuming sports, please include drama club performances, as well as other student clubs at the high school, including band. And more specifically, can the district give us an update as to what needs to happen to our kids to perform in person? I know, Terry, you just stated if it's sports is great, but we're not doing one if we can't do them all. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, don't make assumptions based on what you see in the media. Cornwall is a special place. This board and the superintendent have said, so go academics, so go athletics, so go the arts. We proved that when we brought athletics into workouts. We made plans for arts and clubs to begin at the same time. We're just starting conversations around sports. You know that shortly thereafter, we'll also have conversations about arts and clubs. So be patient. Things can't happen in the snap of fingers, but we do value and prioritize all three, which makes Cornwall such a special community.
Okay. Few other questions are coming up on. I will respond to these on again in follow-ups. And by the way, when we say we're going to respond in follow-ups, we don't mean necessarily with an email to you in person. We're going to put something on our Facebook page that has like collective answers to these. So, okay, I think we can probably move to our Monday's questions. Margaret, if you want to kick that off.
Okay. This is from Ms. Versace and Ms. Cordero. Why are teachers off on Monday? Currently, a lesson is posted or work is given. Teachers are not teaching or meeting with students for a synchronous lesson. Why can't Monday be an instructional day? Students should have, at the very least, a virtual day with their teacher.
So Mondays as they stand now, and again, we're having lots of conversations about what does a 5-day synchronous plan look like at the middle and high school level. So that could change pretty soon. As it stands, Mondays in our hybrid model, the only way that we could make it work was to allow the needed time for our staff who are working their behinds off to make both in-person instruction work and remote. So the creativity that you see, there's always going to be criticism of teachers, but I also hear grave reviews of the creativity that they're implementing to make remote instruction happen. That Monday is the time that they use for that planning and recording and meeting with their colleagues to make remote work happen on the off days for our hybrid model. So just taking away Mondays would not work in our existing model. That said, we're again having conversations at the middle and high school about what a 5-day-a-week could look like. Thus, Mondays would change, and then we'll begin conversations at the middle school. So I see in the chat, and I'll reiterate, teachers are not off on Mondays. They are working their behinds off. I walk the buildings on Mondays. You see little "Don't come in my room, I'm recording" signs. You'll see them if you look through the windows. They're dancing, they're doing whatever they need to do to engage kids in remote instruction. So I understand kind of the need for an additional day, but for this to work in our current model, teachers and staff need that time on Mondays to record their lessons. Otherwise, they would be working until midnight just to record lessons for the off days while getting ready to teach in person the very next day.
And if I can add to that, at our last board meeting, our student reps gave us the updates from the different schools and the events and the lessons that are being planned and being executed. They are just unbelievable. You wouldn't know that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I have to give credit to those teachers who, for example, one teacher converted their entire classroom to the White House and did a whole thing about the inauguration for these students. I mean, unbelievable in regular class time, but now add the pandemic on top of it. And the fact that normally, teachers would have planning time and be working all weekend as well. These teachers are creating those and being able to, like Terry said, put them all together on Mondays, in addition to working. And I'm a teacher as well on the college level, but the amount of work that's required to still try and get the kids where they need to be and do it in a creative and engaging way, which is difficult when you're doing the Zoom thing. And I just really amazing what people are doing. So I give a lot of credit to the teacher and how hard they're working.
Thumbs up on that. Okay, I know a bunch of stuff coming in. There's also support for teachers on the chat, so I think everyone's in agreement on that. Nina, I guess we're up to you on number 10.
Okay, so this question came in from Christine Wark and Jennifer Spitaleri. So the question is there a way we can consider better utilization of a Monday? For example, there could be an office hour or a point in time where the entire class comes together with the teacher for review, questions, etc. Or can teachers provide more instructional videos on the remote learning days for each subject? So kind of a two-pronged question there.
And this one I'm going to have to take, as we can't make a blanket statement for what teachers are doing. So if there's a ask for your child's teacher to post more lessons, reach out to the teacher, reach out to your child's administration, just to see how we can potentially do a little bit more. But I also know that there's tons of staff who are doing just that, providing instructional videos, recordings, and the like on Mondays. At the middle school and high school level, we are talking about what a Monday could look like. So there still is the need for some planning, but then also instruction. So considerations might look different at the middle school than the high school. Again, they're different age groups. Management's a little bit different. The intensity of certain courses may be different. What you can actually do virtually in some courses is different. So we're asking all these questions. Our teachers are on top of it to provide that feedback to teams who are then going to give me a recommendation with regards to kind of what challenges there might be that we need to overcome to make this happen. But we are exploring what Mondays could look like to be the most beneficial for both our students and our staff.
Great. And I know I'm seeing some questions that are further down our list, so we'll get to those as well. Okay, I think we can move to, there's one question on synchronous learning. So this comes from Siobhan Fahey, Elise Stock, Jacqueline Versace, and Melissa Colson. Why has our district not figured out how to live stream to students at home? Why can't the district pay for better broadband internet and have students stream into the classroom on their remote days? If budget is an issue, why not figure out a method in which building staff can alternate days and times of synchronous instruction? When can we expect this to happen?
So this, I just have to high five our teachers, our staff, our administrators, our technology team. We've been doing just that. It's been subtle, but if you've noticed, we've started streaming in small quantities to see what our capacity is as a district, rather than flipping the switch and have it be a nightmare scenario of not being able to support the bandwidth necessary for this to happen. So step one was having our medical remote students stream in. That was not without hiccups, but that is going well. Next, we already talked about our conversation about streaming at the middle school and high school level. So again, I just ask for your patience and consideration as we did not wait for the whole year to pass. We started working on it right away to increase our bandwidth while staying within budget. So we are moving this along.
And Terry, is it, if I understand you correctly, it's almost like a test kitchen. You know, you're gonna see how far you can take it progressively as we go.
That's right. And you can't say a blanket whole district can do X, Y, or Z. Our high school is in much better shape than one of our other schools might be with regards to connectivity and the like. So we started at the high school level. They were able to handle a lot more over time than we thought at the beginning of the year. So that's why you've seen a lot more movement there. We started middle school was our test case with streaming special education students in some instances with medical remote, with high needs students. So every building has had a piece of this to really pilot, meet with teachers, get feedback from parents to see how it's working and expand over the course of the year.
Okay. Everyone on chat, I see your questions. I'm saving them. Margaret, I think we are good to move into grading. This is actually, a few questions have come up on the chat about grading standards. So I want to just start off there with number 12.
Okie doke. How are you planning on addressing student grades for this year? Can a degree of leniency be added, at least temporarily, to grading students in junior high and above? Any consideration of greater leniency in grading would be greatly appreciated. The stress and anxiety of our current reality is more than enough for kids to deal with. And that was from Jessica Ladley and Siobhan Fahey.
Yeah, and this and, state testing and the like are all in kind of the same category of, we follow a lot of the mandates from New York State Education Department with regards to grading expectations, assessments. Cancellation of assessments is not on us, that's on the New York State Education Department. So if leniency is by way of our teachers and staff are very understanding of challenges that our parents are facing, our students are facing, we would expect conversations to be had between counselors, parents, and teachers. That's what communication is all about. If we're going to say leniency by way of pass fail versus grades, we're just not there. There's students who depend on grades for the next level and the like. So we would encourage, if there's a concern, to meet directly with your child's teacher or administrator to alleviate those concerns. But there's not a blanket leniency being provided. It's case by case. How do we work with parents and students to address the impact of a pandemic on teaching and learning, while also highly valuing social emotional learning and what's needed for students to feel supported and loved and cared about when they're on screen 60% of the time during a week. So we are taking those things in consideration.
Okay, I can probably flow right into the next one. It's Nina's turn, I believe.
So number 13, it's from Melissa Coulson and an anonymous submitter. So will Regents exams or state testing resume this year? And if so, how can you assure students and families that they will be prepared for New York State June Regents exams, in parentheses, NAP exams, when they only have access to their teachers 2 days per week? Are you comfortable relying on video instruction, again, parenthetical, not provided by CCSD teachers, close parenthetical, to prepare our students for college and career readiness?
So again, that decision comes from the state level. Our New York State Education Department has submitted a formal request. That's as high as you can go. So we can write letters and the like to suspend state assessments. The people in the highest authority have submitted that to the federal level. So we're waiting to hear that word. What we're comfortable with is our high school teachers, all of our teachers are phenomenal. For this particular question, the reason that we're considering this shift to synchronous learning 5 days a week came right from some teachers at the high school who said, how can we do this even better for our kids who are preparing for college, career, and beyond? So there is no comfort. There is no sit back and let's just see how things go. We have made changes every month of this school year to try to improve teaching and learning for students. So no comfort whatsoever. And that's what's to come at the high school level. That's why we're talking about 5-day synchronous instruction as a potential next step.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, just one more question on grading, just to fit this one in. So this comes from Miss Link, Erica Stankiewicz-Nichols, and also an anonymous poster. So how is the Board of Ed and the administrative team gathering and using data to analyze and address students' academic COVID slip during the pandemic and current learning model? In particular, as students transfer back from EduSeer, how will we be able to track what the student did and did not learn? Will the district provide a baseline assessment for kids that were subjected to EduSeer? And will the district provide services to help with any deficiencies the children may have developed during this time?
So a lot of thought went into this. So one is a lot of work went into pre-EduSeer to make sure that standards were aligned and then addressing where the gaps were. So it wasn't 100% aligned with our curriculum, but we knew that going in. As we pivoted out of EduSeer into our hybrid model, we specifically had those students come back early so that we could start to address those, any gaps that might be present. Again, I want to be careful with blanket statements because I also get letters from parents who said, my child did amazing in EduSeer, did exceptionally well, and is pivoting right into the hybrid model without issue. So there's also those instances. So I want to be careful with blanket statements. Not all of our students who participate in EduSeer are exhibiting gaps in learning. All that said, our teachers are amazing. It's not easy, but we do have students move in from other districts or from out of state and the like, and the expectation is the same. Figure out where the students are, what gaps might be present, and how do you spiral that and work that into your instruction moving forward. In some schools, they've also talked about utilizing extra hours that we usually set aside for state testing preparation and support, and providing that for some of our EduSeer students. So again, my strong recommendation is that this is a kid by kid discussion that should be had with your child's teacher and your child's principal to make sure that your son or daughter is getting what they need to be successful this year.
Okay, I see a couple of follow-ups to that. Brittany Boyardi saying my child's gaps were not addressed since she left EduSeer. Michael Addison, can you explain synchronous learning again? There's actually a question coming down the pike on just about the update, some of the stuff that Terry's been talking about. So that'll give him an opportunity to expand on that again. And Lydia Cordero saying, you keep saying that teachers are amazing, but they are creating 2 lessons a week. I guess I don't think it's just 2 lessons a week, but I think, Terry, I don't know if you wanted to respond to that.
I mean, I have to stick up for our teachers. I do. Our teachers are amazing. If there's a concern with a particular teacher, you need to talk to that teacher and your child's administrator to make sure that your child is getting what they need. I have a stepdaughter in the district. She is not getting 2 lessons a week. I can say that 100% fact. So if there is an issue, I would just strongly recommend reach out to the teacher, reach out to the principal, and then to me if the issue is not being addressed. But we can't make blanket statements that our teachers are only doing 2 a week when they're working their behinds off to try to do everything possible for.
All right. There is another follow-up on EduSeer and kind of, Terry, what you were talking about. I'm forgetting completely who read the last question. Is it up to me now, Margaret, or is it?
I think Nina read the last one, so it's your turn, Brendan.
Actually, no, I read
Oh,
the
you read
last
the
one.
last
Now
one. Oh, so it's me.
I'm
Okay.
remembering it. Okay, so you're
EduSeer. My son is a high school sophomore and a medically remote student. He had an excellent experience with EduSeer for the first half of the school year. My question is, why did the district not continue a contract with EduSeer for the remaining school year for the medically remote students? And that came from Angela Lindenberger.
For our kids. So 2 reasons why we weren't able to extend that the second half of the year. One is this cost the district money, money that was unbudgeted. So just as a quick flashback, we were told in late July, early August, how to run this district by way of instruction from the governor and New York State Education Department. So we had to scramble to figure out how to make this work in our district. There was a price tag for the first semester with EduSeer. The second piece, and probably the most important piece, is we want our kids with our teachers and our staff. So by testing out our bandwidth and internet connectivity, we realized that we were able to have those students stream in, which is much more effective for us because our teachers know our kids, our staff knows our kids the best. So that is our preference, not to have them with a completely separate organization teaching our students. So it's twofold.
great. And Kathleen Gualtieri just joined as a panelist. Kathleen, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. You're on mute, so you would just have to unmute to do that. So went off and back on. Okay, I'll let you on for a second. We will move to the next question. Certainly, if you wanted to chime in, Kathleen, you can do that. All right, so we're chugging along here. So Nina, if you wanted to read, we're up to 16.
Okay, so this is from Melissa Gilbin, and this is about IEPs. So my question is, when is the school going to be able to accommodate IEPs that are in place with this hybrid system? There is nothing that allows the district to fail to meet requirements in an IEP, regardless of a hybrid education plan or not. When an IEP orders a child to have reading lessons 30 minutes daily, the asynchronous mechanism to give that child a simple sheet of paper and have her do 10 minutes worth of work alone with no guidance is not meeting the 30-minute daily reading lesson as required in an IEP.
So I'm just going to agree. Again, I'm not going to go into specific parent-student instances because there's a lot of things I don't have at my ready to be able to provide a comprehensive answer. I am going to agree that there is nothing about the hybrid model that says we can just ignore things in a child's IEP. Absolutely agree. What my expectation is that we're working with our CSE, with our teachers, with our staff, if there's concerns about how IEP goals are being met, that is a conversation that should be had with our teachers, our staff, and the CSE.
One follow-up, and Terry, I just want to be sure. I know we touched on it before. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to it. Just back to the EduSeer. This is from the chat. How will we address grading for the children in the EduSeer program? These kids were subjected to a program that had inaccuracies, grammatical errors, etc. Perhaps this works for high school students, but for my 9-year-old, it was a terrible experience. So the question specifically, grading and EduSeer
level. So for all of our students, we had them EduSeer submit to our school level teams to look at progress, look at standards and the like, and work collaboratively to determine grades. So that happened at every level. Again, if for this 9-year-old, I would expect that a conversation be had at the building level, because we can't make a blanket statement that the grading didn't work in totality. So I just don't have enough specifics, but I do know that there was a collaborative effort between the EduSeer staff and our school staff to figure out grading for the entire first semester.
Okay, great. All right, let's move. We have a couple questions on funding. This first one is from Susan Conti. Where do we stand on the use of the Safe School Bond Act monies? At the September 8th meeting, Mr. Sotland discussed that we have $1.3 million available, and the district was hoping to make whatever upgrades are needed to the buildings to expand the bandwidth for about $1 million, thereby leaving $300,000 available to purchase more Chromebooks.
So this has been a moving target. Again, a high five to Mr. Danishbar, our new director of technology. He's made things happen over these past few months that we thought we would have to wait for Smart Schools Bond funding to make happen. But he's been able to rework things within our district, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor. That's why we have so much live streaming in conversation and already happening in our buildings. So now we're trying to take what improvements Mr. Danishbar and his team and all of our hardworking staff in the buildings made in advance of getting that approval and making adjustments to that application process. So we're in a good spot where improvements made. Now we can use that money for things that we really need in the district. Some of it will be improving connectivity and the like, but some of it could be used for more devices and other needs in the district. So stay tuned. Mr. Danishbar will probably come back to the board and the community to give an update on that in the coming month.
And if I could just follow up on that, I mean, I know that at the beginning of our school year, and really before that, but the technology is a big concern. Our district has, struggled with these issues for a long time, and I just want to second how impressed I've been with Sean's performance. Just the number of wins on the scoreboard since he's come on has really been impressive, and certainly it like you said, it just opens up possibilities for that funding that is now still on its way. So the benefits will only continue to come in. Okay, I think we can move to the next funding question. So Margaret, if you want to, jump on that.
Okie doke. Assuming a lack of money to provide the proper resources is open. Assuming a lack of money to provide the proper resources to open is one of the main reasons why we have the model we have. Do you know if the district will be receiving money from the recently passed Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, CRRSA, which was passed at the end of December? That's from Victoria Halfpenny.
So budget wasn't any real impediment to opening. It was a barrier to providing choice as an option, because we would have had to hire so many additional staff, which is personnel is our largest, most significant budget line item. I'm honestly not holding my breath to see any of this money. I'm going to stay just there. That, you know, so many things happen between federal to state to local school district that we're just hopeful that anything that we do get would offset any cuts to our budget for next year. So that's my sincere hope, but I'm not holding my breath to see an influx of funding to address all of the hand sanitizer dispensers that we put in place, all the masks that we purchased, all the barriers and other pieces and cleaning and hygienic equipment that we needed to just open. We're just not holding our breath to get any relief there. I do want to address something I saw in the chat, Brendan, if that's okay, that someone stated that, you know, full vaccination of teachers and students would be our only way of opening. Not true. Please don't spell that rumor. That is not true. What I stated is that just vaccinating our teachers would not automatically give us a green light to open full in person. There's too many factors at play there. There's still a lot of conversation that needs to happen at the state level of what our model is going to look like for next year. I'm hoping that we get this well before end of July, which is when we got it for this year. That is very hard to pull off. We as a parent community, as a board community, should be lobbying for, we should know what next year is going to look like from an in-person perspective, from a high risk perspective, well in advance of the summer, so that we can make plans accordingly as a school district and as individual families.
And two quick follow-ups to that, Terry. So I'm actually going to be, this week is the New York State School Board Association Capital Conference. So I'm as the legislative liaison, I'm attending some meetings on the district behalf to some state reps, and that's one of the points that I'll be pushing, is just clarity, you know, as to when this is going to happen. But to follow up on the previous question about you know, just vaccinations, this is a question that I've been asking at board meetings myself, and I've done a little bit of you know, calling around. Again, I implore anybody, call the New York State Department of Health, call the Orange County Department of Health. They answer, they speak, they're happy to do so. But a lot of the science is still out. You know, this vaccine, I mean, first, the virus is so new, the vaccine is even newer. And one thing they're learning is that even if you're vaccinated, you're still a carrier. This is what they told me through the Department of Health. So, you know, no individual school district can be out ahead of the research that's being done at those levels. So I know it's a deeply them completely, but you know, we have to wait and see what the science is on that before we can make any of those blanket statements and predictions. Okay, I think we're good to. All right. And we're getting on time, but we're so close. We're so close to getting through all the questions. So are we up to Nina?
The change to the live model, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this comes from Charisse Pagano. So my first concern is in regards to the proposal to switch the high school model from a hybrid to a full streaming with in-person classes several days a week. This is problematic because of the multiple issues. Primarily, where is the data to suggest that this will be more successful than the model that is currently in place with recorded lessons? As to date, there is no educational theory or practice that supports this transition. 2, with continued problems with Google Meet as a streaming service, how are students and teachers to handle constant technical issues such as dropped signals, streaming difficulties, etc.? Since we are not a one-to-one district with technology, how are families going to handle having multiple children at home and a structured streaming day, but not enough devices in order to participate?
So first, with regards to what's more effective, streaming with our staff is more effective than recorded lessons, period. I don't need a theory to back that up. Just by way of being an educator, being a principal and instructional coach, the interaction between a teacher and a student is not going to be replaced by recorded lessons ever. So that is just my stance as the superintendent, that we have to move more towards what a typical year would be, and live streaming gets us one step closer. The challenges are legitimate. Ms. Pagano raised some really important things that we're considering: devices, numerous kids on it at once, and the like. So those are all things that, just like with our opening, we just have to work through one family at a time. We're committed to that. We're slowly getting devices, more and more devices in. Again, we're not a one-to-one district, and there's ways that we can figure out instances to make this happen. So we want to hear from the families as we get closer and closer to making this a reality, but it's not going to be perfect. The challenges and barriers are there, but we can't just sit back and allow it to just continue in the format that we have. When I stated in the summer that we would have done more live streaming earlier on if we didn't have the technology difficulties that Mr. Carty referenced just a few minutes ago. The improvements that we've seen have moved us closer, but we need to move more towards live streaming. If we see issues at home, we've had entire high school stream. Please don't forget that this is not a pie in the sky dream. We have closed the high school and had them all stream in for being quarantined, medical remote, and the like. So we're already working with families through those instances. So we're going to slowly move towards back to what a typical school year would look like. And it is not remote recorded lessons.
Okay. Great. When we're at that moment when the next person on the chat is actually the next person on the questions. So Dawn Kilgore has the next question. Is the district changing the entire instructional format in the middle of the year? And is this for all grades? Rumors have been circulating now for weeks that the asynchronous days are going to be switched to virtual live days. While the benefits of live in-person instruction cannot be beat, live virtual days may have just as many downsides as benefits. As a quick summary, the first downside is younger siblings can no longer rely on the older ones for help because they're in live classes. Another downside is that kids will have difficulty focusing while staring at a computer for hours at end, particularly those younger kids and kids who may be struggling. Also, there are concerns about the quality of the live feed. Finally, if information is missed during the live teaching, if information is missed during the live teaching the students at home, I think I'm screwing this up. If information is missed during the live lesson, basically, and students are not able to ask questions or watch the instruction again to get the information that they missed, will these live stream classes be recorded for playback? Instead of changing the whole learning model, could we instead look at improving the asynchronous days instead?
So again, I've answered this. We're looking at it at the high school and middle school levels, meeting with staff to figure out all these questions of, what happens if there's technology difficulties? What happens if a lesson crashes? I have to say again, we do have live streaming occurring right now. So we are experiencing those as we speak. I'm working through those concerns as well. With regards to support at home, I spoke with some students about this earlier. Some students have gotten volunteer hours and the like. And I said, well, I appreciate that. What are we to do if the governor 2 weeks from now says we're all back to in person or the like? So some things have to change as we make modifications through the year. So we'll work with families about who's supporting kids at home. With live streaming, it's our intent that the teacher would support the kids at home. The other piece was staring at a screen all day. My kids back in Fairfax County are full live stream every day. They figure out if you want to talk about a community that's paying attention to screen time, investigate Fairfax County. With my own kids, there's things that teachers do to reduce the amount of screen time. So in a typical classroom, a teacher might give direct instruction for 10 minutes on a concept in math, then have students complete some work on their own. My kids, when they're completing work on their own, they're not looking at the screen. They can put the screen down, complete their work, and then come back on when the teacher needs their direct attention. So these are things that teachers are doing a great job trying to figure out, but it's also happening across the country. So we're also gathering information from those districts who are live streaming 5 days a week in their model. There's districts that haven't allowed in-person all year long. So we're learning a lot from those districts.
Great. And I see a bunch of questions on the chat about social emotional learning, and that happens to be our next question. So Margaret, you can take it away.
Okay, so social emotional area. What are guidance counselors doing to ensure mental health issues are not being overlooked, specifically in middle and high school students, in light of the rise in anxiety, depression, suicidal ideations in this age group as a result of the isolation felt during this past year? That was from Melissa Colsant. How has the district provided a social emotional piece mirroring the Castle Roadmap Back Plan, which includes the following 4 SEL critical practices? This is from Brenda. The first is take time to cultivate and deepen relationships, build partnerships, and plan for SEL. Number 2, design opportunities where adults can connect, heal, and build their capacity to support students. Number 3, create safe, supportive, and equitable learning environments that promote all students' social and emotional development. And 4, use data as an opportunity to share power, deepen relationships, and continuously improve support for students, families, and staff. And that also includes, Carrie was also one in that question group.
One, I just have to make sure that everyone understands that this is a partnership. There's a lot of in-person and remote instruction happening in our district right now. The primary information would be from parents and other caregivers at home if there's something happening at home that we should be aware of in our school. So our parents and our caregivers are the front line for making sure that we're aware of any concerns that our students might be dealing with. 2, the reason why we value in-person instruction is there is nothing that will replace looking at a kid eye to eye to say something's not quite right with Johnny today. I might need to have him see someone or check in with him. So that is happening. Our counselors are doing a phenomenal job with that, and our teachers are doing a great job with that of checking in with students. We see them twice a week to really check in with them in person to see how they're doing. So that is the primary support that we can offer, is that if parents raise a concern to us, that we are to follow up and work in partnership with our parents, but we don't know what's going on at home if you don't let us know at the school level. But having our students in person at least twice a week is helpful as well. Much different than the concerns that we had back in March, where we just weren't seeing any students in person. So March all the way until June, that was a significant concern, is the social emotional health of our students. It continues to be a concern, but we do at least have the opportunity of having our students in person and our typical protocols in place. The last thing I want to mention is there's no playbook for how do you provide a supportive environment at home and at school during a pandemic. Everyone responds differently. Some of our traditions have changed. Just think of Thanksgiving and all of the differences that were made for Thanksgiving. Think about the relationships that we have with extended family, that we might not be seeing as much. So there's things happening in our homes to support our kids and our families during this pandemic. And it's also what we're trying to do in our schools. So far from perfect, but I would also argue that there's a lot of things that we could, that we're gonna learn as a result of this pandemic for the future, because this is just not anywhere near normal, and its impact is impacting some kids and some families more or less than others.
There was a follow-up as far as supporting the staff for mental health. What about the mental health of our staff dealing with all of this for our kids and taking on more than they ever have?
Absolutely. So again, checking in with our principals and administrators to see if there's any concerns. We do have employee assistance program that's been in the district for years and years, well before the pandemic, to have professionals really do that check-in. And then just, things like the Sunshine Committee and things like that to make sure that we're celebrating each other, still enjoying coffee and chocolate on a Monday morning, which is one of the toughest days of the week. But so again, far from perfect, but we just need a lot of communication because this is impacting individuals very differently from one person to another.
Another follow-up from Melissa Colson on just the mental health aspect. She's basically, can we set something up with like a regular recurring check-in, I guess, with guidance counselors, just how, sometimes if you're relying on students to reach out to parents, that's not always going to happen just because of their stage of life, which I think we all either know personally or remember. So, anything to add there, Terry?
It's just difficult. I would just have to say to have a check-in with every single student is difficult. So we really do rely on our teachers, our parents, other staff members to really help us. But there are different ways that we try to check in on a regular basis, but to set up a schedule of a regular check-in for every child would be difficult. But I'll definitely take that back to Mr. DeBold and his team to see what we can do to ramp up even more.
Okay. All right. I think we are at our last formal question. Nina, if you wanted to
So this
take over
comes
that.
from Ruth Maurer, PMP. I would like to know when parents will be told if next school year will have to be also, will have to also be a hybrid model like it was this year. Important to know as soon as possible for those who work full-time. Knowing this really by the end of the school year is best, since that will allow me to find a new facility if I have to, that might also have a summer camp the children can go to so that they can start making friends, etc.
Yeah, I would love that same answer as soon as possible. Again, this is not a district decision. We were waiting on pins and needles to hear from Governor Cuomo whether schools would even be allowed to open. That was around this mid-July. Once we got that approval, we were waiting for New York State Education Department to provide the guidelines for reopening schools. So like Mr. Carty said, he's advocating from a board perspective. We're advocating as superintendents to get this answer sooner rather than later. And I would encourage parents to do that as well. We need this answer now. If there's any semblance that next year is to look like this year, we should be outraged as a Cornwall community. We've learned far too much since this pandemic began about quarantine, about protocols that can be in place to keep our kids safe, and far too much data to show that with the protocols that we have in place that we're able to be successful. So a lot of answers at the state level that still need to be resolved.
Terry, I think there's an ancillary question to that on the chat. It says that the district gets approval to open 5 days, normal hours, would our medically remote students still be able to continue the year remotely? So I think that assumes this school year, and that's from Angela Lindeberger.
Yeah, I would have to have further details about what the, full in-person would look like. Again, our current model is we have all the medical remote students streaming in. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to continue that.
Great. And I know that there's, just a larger point. I mean, I know somebody mentioned on the chat, we're halfway through the school year, so I guess nothing is changing. I think just to reiterate something that Terry said, we are testing out more ways to, use synchronous lessons and using our tech capabilities are slowly expanding, and we're going to expand with them. But there's no light switch that's being turned on. But to say that nothing is changing, I think would be probably selling it a bit short. But Terry, I don't know if you wanted to reiterate some of that.
Yeah, well said, Mr. Cardy. We work too hard to say that nothing has changed in the district, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I know that was the end of our 22 kind of amalgamation questions. I know we got to as many of the follow-ups on the chat as we could. I know there are some other questions that were asked on the through email. I think one of them was just about an upcoming snow day. I think that it's the fact that we all got a snow day today sort of answered that. One though was interesting, just about snow days in general. One person asked if we could if we should use those snow days for instructional time. I know that there are some elements here of, we can't just, we have to meet our certain guideline of school days for the year. I don't know, Tara, if you can just answer, why we take snow days and why it's not just an option to, take that extra day in class.
Yeah, so a few things on snow days, and I include part of it in my message. We don't have an unlimited supply of snow days, and we just have to remember that the intent of snow days was to keep our students and staff and families safe and off the roads. In this pandemic, we have remote capabilities. So I go back to a sentiment I made earlier. If you want to be the most unpopular person with every single decision, be a superintendent. So having kids work on Monday, I got tons of emails about you're not giving snow days and kids should play. And then same number of emails when I had a snow day today of kids need to be in school and learning and the like. So again, we're trying to strike a balance of staying within our obligations as a school district for learning, while also understanding that for social emotional support, kids just need a snow day, staff just needs a snow day, parents just need a snow day. So we're trying to strike that balance. But please know, every time I hit that message, it's going to upset some folks. So we have 6 built-in snow days. We're trying to strike that balance. But please know that if we exceed that 6, then days start coming off of spring break for this year.
Great. And also, I know we have questions that keep streaming in on the chat. I just have to remind everybody, we will do our best to follow up with everything that has been brought up with the chat. I want to tie a bow on it just with a couple of things that seem to be popping up. One is, if we do switch to a more synchronous learning model, there's been a request to put out a questionnaire to the community to see how that would affect different parents, and maybe to try to devise what solutions would be best, and maybe identify some unintended consequences. I mean, that strikes. It seems reasonable, but Terry, I'll allow you to answer that.
Yes, and please know that we've submitted surveys all year long with regards to technology needs and the like. So we also want to make sure that we keep that in mind. But yes, we'll make sure that we're reaching out to parents as well to just make sure we have as much information as needed for it to be successful.
Okay, I think we may have to put a bow on it there. So first, thank you to everybody who came out. Thank you to everybody who emailed beforehand. The conversation through the chat has been a lot of really insightful questions. So I'm glad we can get to some of them. Like I said, our plan now is we're going to follow up with all of this is being recorded. So we're going to post all of this by answer on our Facebook page. Don't hold me to tomorrow, sometime after the weekend when I can put my kids to sleep early enough to get time to do it. And we'll also do our best to keep following up with these chat questions, because I've seen a few themes that keep coming up that weren't part of the primary discussion. So we'll do our best to address that. But Terry, thank you so much for being. I feel like you've been talking for 2 hours straight here. So thank you for the great information. Margaret, Nina, Teresa, Larry, everybody who's been attending. Thank you very much. We, again, just keep an eye on our Board of Ed Facebook page, and we will follow up.
Thank you very
with,
much, Brendan, for making this effort. You also.
Of
Thank
course,
you.
of course.
Good night.
All right, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Take care,
Good night.
community.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.